All right, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Vicky 3 Academy. I'm Walker, and here we're discussing another critical technology, and this one's going to be a really interesting one. So, enlistment offices. This is one of the things that I've highlighted as a critical technology here in the military tab, even though it really pretty much only does one thing. It allows you access to the mass conscription law. So, this is a critical technology, but it is a critical technology that has some serious asterisks on it. First, if you're going to be trying to go for enlistment offices, you need to understand what it does. So what it's going to do, it's going to allow you to switch into the mass conscription army model. Mass conscription army model is a little different from all of the other ones. Mass conscription gives you 100 max barracks levels, which is the same as a professional army, without giving you a professional army political strength boost. So if you don't want to be working with your armed forces for whatever reason, mass conscription is just a huge upgrade over the professional army right there based off of that. But it's also a giant upgrade over professional army in a lot of other ways. It gets you a much higher conscription rate, as well as getting you a colossal training rate upgrade. So mass conscription is really just sort of like the industrial super form of the professional army. But it is a little harder to get into simply because professional army is pretty popular once you're in it, in most industrialized nations. And switching into mass conscription can be difficult to find political support for it if you're already in professional army. If you're in peasant levies or national militia, it can be a lot easier to get to mass conscription, but I usually encourage people to get out of peasant levies really, really quickly, which is why I actually like recommending national militia, because it lets you get here. This is better than this, pretty much just like 1-to-1 in basically every single way, in fact. And it's generally superior to national militia as well, simply because you are going to be getting a much bigger barracks level. It comes with a slightly smaller conscription rate, which you can see just by, can mobilize 210 battalions instead of 266 battalions. So that, you are sacrificing a tiny amount of your conscription strength, but in exchange, you get the world. So you get a huge barracks level, but you also get probably the most important military stat in the game right now, which is training rate. This thing is outrageous because it's gonna double the speed with which your barracks are able to recruit, while also doubling the speed with which your conscription centers are able to recruit, which is enormous. If you've ever fought with a national militia in the late game, you'll know that your armies are hilariously oversized, but they also are very slow to get moving because of the fact that they utilize conscription. Your barracks are tiny with national militia, and so most of your army needs to be pulled together from all over the world, all over the empire. And of course, because it is conscription, the more people who are actually participating in your economy, as in the fewer peasants and unemployed that you have, the weaker conscription is going to get. And so that's why I think that mass conscription, simply when taken a look at from a broad sense, is obviously better than both of those in basically every single way. But there is an asterisk on this, and it's the way you see how it says disallows multiple production methods. So we are going to do research 5 and just get all of the text here for America, and then we're going to do fast enact, and then we're going to go in and do mass conscription. And then you'll see what we actually can't use, because there are going to be some things that we cannot use in our conscripts now that we've switched out of our national militia. So if you are in mass conscription, you can use mass conscription on mechanized infantry. That will be hilariously expensive, but be aware that you can do that. General recommendation that I'm going to offer people is that unless you really know what you're doing, you want to be mostly using trench infantry on your conscription centers because they're extremely cost efficient. Similarly, you can go all the way up to siege artillery. Siege artillery are strictly better than shrapnel artillery, but they are a lot more expensive. And so again, you just kind of got to scale in the size of this army to what you need it to do for you, because you are going to be able to build a gigantic professional army with mass conscription. But your troops that you conscript, because you're no longer a national militia, you cannot give your conscripts aerial reconnaissance anymore, which means that they are going to have your conscripts are going to have naturally much lower stats than a national militia army or a professional army, which we will discuss the differences in these stats here in the how to militarize video. But you should just be aware that like aerial reconnaissance on conscripts is absolutely bananas powerful, and you are not going to have that with mass mobilization. You're not even going to have machine gunners in your conscription centers. And so what you need to do if you're in mass mobilization is just understand the nature of your troops. If you're in mass mobilization, these conscript troops are going to be defensive pinning troops, so you want them probably on trench infantry, shrapnel, and then just leave them as is. If you have enough opium to do first aid, awesome, because recovery rate is very, very useful. But this combination of trench infantry plus shrapnel artillery is going to be extremely cost efficient, while also hopefully offering you enough opportunity and enough resources to run like a giant and elite, well, depending on what sort of events you want to get access to, a giant and elite military with like a professional military that is supported by a Russian World War II style conscription army to just sort of like pad out fronts. Because you with a bunch of trench infantry with shrapnel artillery, you will have the ability to like clog up fronts everywhere and make advancing for your enemies an absolute nightmare. And that's one of the biggest things I like about mass conscription, is that if you have the population and the economic resources, you can fight the entire world with mass conscription all at once pretty easily, depending on the nature of the world and your current the current strength of your country. All right, that's Walker. That's Enlistment Offices. I hope that everyone appreciates how absolutely insane this technology is. It really is. I think the biggest issue with it is just the relative inability to find ways to move into it, because you're going to find that there are a lot of IGs that are on the fence about it, and so you have to pay very, very close attention to the ideologies of the leaders in question and see if you can find a way to encourage people to go into mass conscription, right? Like Jingoist is going to be your absolute best friend if you're trying to go mass conscription route. All right, that's Walker. Take care.